Arise TV interview articulated lies, blunders, exposing PDP presidential candidate lacks of basic facts. Mr. Presidential Candidate, Lincoln did not contest United States presidency 5 or 6 times. Take away from Atiku Abubakar bungled interview on Arise television. We have watched Alhaji Atiku Abubakar interview on Arise TV and were extremely shocked by the many lies and ignorance displayed by the People's Democratic Party presidential candidate. In the interview, Alhaji Atiku exposed himself as a man who is not prepared for the job, is applying for, and a man who cannot be trusted with our commonwealth. He was flippant in his response to imported questions about his record of service and how he made money while serving in custom. He muddled up facts and exhibited the folding absence of mind. Here are our takeaways from the bungled interview. Number 1, PDP candidate is a lawbreaker. It was most shocking. Atiku admitted that he cheated the system for decades and engaged in gross misconduct as a government worker, as a custom officer at the Idiroko border. Atiku revealed that he ran a commercial taxi service, claiming there is no law stopping public officers from doing business in Nigeria. He punched other, claiming there is no conflict of interest in doing so. We found this to be untrue. Every officer in the civil service is expected to comply with the Code of Conduct and Service Rules, which bars civil and public servants from engaging in private business while in government employment, to the detriment of the service he or she is employed to render to the public. The 1999 Constitution further codifies this in Part 1, 5th Schedule, Section of 2B. It says a public officer should not, except where he is not employed on full-time basis, engage or participate in the management or running of any private business, profession or trade. The rules, however, allow public officers to engage in farming. We wonder which rule or which law Atiku was relying upon for his gross misconduct as a public officer. It is our considered view that Atiku gamed the system all through his career in public service, culminating his funding of the Intel Logistics along with late Shehu Yaradua and some Italians, even while he was still in the employment of Nigerian custom. Number 2, poor knowledge of key sectors of the economy. We also find it surprisingly that the PDP presidential candidate does not know the contribution of oil and gas industry to Nigeria's GDP. He claimed the sector represents 20% of our national GDP, whereas it is below 10% and is still failing owing to the growth of non-oil sector under the current All Progressive Congress-led administration of President Muhammadu Buhari. Number 3, false data from Egypt. Atiku Abubakar wanted to impress his audience with supposed knowledge of international affairs. He ended up embarrassing himself with false data he cited from Egypt. We found this claim that Egypt has 2 million police officers on the street to be untrue. Various resources put the number of about 500,000 for a population of 104 million and not 80 million as falsely claimed by Atiku. Rotational presidency asked to justify why the PDP jettisoned Section 3 of its constitution, which enshrined power rotation between the North and the South. Atiku tried to forge his answer by focusing on Governor Nyesom Wike and his effort to reconcile with him after he, a northerner, snapped the presidential ticket that ought to have been taken by a southerner. While Atiku was playing to the gallery of APC Muslim presidential ticket, he didn't cease seeking to be president after 8 years of a president from his part of Nigeria as politics of exclusion. Broke further, Atiku provided several contradictory answers. In one breath, he said power rotation is not in the constitution. In another breath, he said the PDP has never macro-zoned any position. Then he admitted that the party had also rotated power between the North and the South. Atiku's justification as to why he became PDP presidential candidate instead of a southerner is a perfect example in ellipsis. In politics, they say we negotiate power through negotiation, whatever that means. Atiku, ever an expert in not telling the truth, also did not come clean over his once upon a time preference for same-faith ticket. In 1993, after Atiku and Kingibe lost to MK Abiola in the SDP presidential primary, Atiku was the choice of the Yaradua camp to become Abiola's running mate. Abiola overlooked him and picked the more cerebral cerebral diplomat and bureaucrat Babagana Kingibe. In all the tones of biographies written about him, there was nowhere he said he opposed Shehu Yaradua's support for his candidacy as Abiola's vice president. He was not against it since it favored him. Now it is politically convenient and opportunistic for him to oppose Tinubu Shettima ticket. Political credential most reprehensive was Atiku's slide about how many times he ran to become the governor of Adamawa State or Gongola State. Mr. Presidential candidate, in case you don't know, due to your limited education, you run for an office only when you are at the ballot in an election. Your signifying interest in an office does not mean the same as running for the office. From available records, the first time you contested the governorship election in your state was in 1999. Your name entered the ballot for the first time and you won. Poor grasp of history. Atiku Abubakar also exhibited poor knowledge of history when he claimed that Abraham Lincoln, one of America's famous leaders, contested the presidency 5 to 6 times before he eventually won. This is a beer parlor tale that has been recycled over time. Lincoln contested the United States presidency twice. He ran in 1860 and 1864 and won both before he was assassinated on the 15th April 1865. The first story about Lincoln's failed presidential bid sprang from his previous first state and national election from the state of Illinois. They were not the same as America's presidential election. According to historians, Lincoln lost his first election in 1832 for Illinois state legislature. In 1834, he ran again and won. In 1843, he ran for Congress. He lost 3 years after. In 1846, Lincoln ran for Congress again. This time, he won and went to Washington. From established history, in 1848, Lincoln ran for re-election to Congress and lost. In 1854, he ran for Senate of the United States. He lost. Lincoln also made another failed bid for United States Senate from Illinois in 1858. He lost to Democrat Stephen Douglas. Our conclusion is that Alhaji Atiku Abubakar is ill-prepared to be president of Nigeria. If we could to bungle a television interview, which was planned well ahead of days and time, the duo of Dr. Ruben Abati and Ms. Tundun Abiola conducted it. We expected the presidential candidate to be well informed of any issue before coming on national TV to expose himself to avoidable ridicule. Well, that is the camp of Tinubu responding into Atiku's interview, saying he bungled it, that they were all full of lies. What is your own opinion? Is our presidential candidate telling lies? If it's not, kindly make your own comment to know and so subscribe to my page. Thank you for those who have been supporting us. Thank you for your support. We appreciate. And for those who have not subscribed, please kindly subscribe. See you some other time. Be blessed.